militant godless, and founds 2 universities of atheism. He points out communism has not changed its attitude toward religion. In this church, these 14-year-olds are forced to replace their communion with a youth oath, which swears allegiance to the communist state. And these third-grade students are being sworn into the Communist Young Pioneer Organization. The children take the oath in answer to the question, are you prepared to give us your entire strength to work toward the noble goal of communism? Khrushchev accelerates the youth program and coordinates it on a worldwide basis, identifying communism with the future. This World Youth Festival, just another instrument of communist propaganda, is taking place in Vienna. The theme, as always, peace, a communist peace. Propaganda is big business for the Soviet Union. Khrushchev's excuse? Our enemies spend vast sums on subversive activities against socialist countries. The truth is, the Soviet Union is paying around $2 billion a year for their propaganda, employing about 500,000 people. Moscow spends approximately $2 per free man to be subjugated, as against 2 cents per person allocated to world propaganda by the free countries combined. The Soviet effort is roughly 100 times as great as that of all the rest of the world. The money to pay for this fantastic propaganda machine comes from the masses under the communist yoke, who work for absurdly low wages to enable their masters not only to dominate them the better, but to also deceive more successfully the masses in free countries. The importance of propaganda to the success of communism was emphasized by Lenin when he instructed, every sacrifice must be made, the greatest obstacles must be overcome, in order to carry on agitation and propaganda systematically, perseveringly, persistently, and patiently. While Khrushchev believes he can win the world with his policy of peaceful coexistence, in China, where the communist tyranny is the same, the communist objective the same, the destruction of the dignity of man the same, Mao Zedong's conception of achieving the communist goal is different. Again and again, he says, war with the West is inevitable. It is desirable. Meanwhile, in China as everywhere else, communism produces waste, squalor, misery, and death. Thousands challenge the terror of the secret police to flee into British Hong Kong. From the day Mao takes power, the countries along the Chinese frontier are scenes of constant warfare. Communism feeds on its neighbors. In French Indochina, the native desire for freedom is perverted into a war of communist imperialism. Geneva, 1954. Red China's Zhou Enlai and French Premier Mendes France sign an armistice that surrenders the northern half of Vietnam, 12 million people, to longtime communist Ho Chi Minh. Like Germany and Korea, Indochina is now half slave, half free. The French leave Hanoi according to the armistice terms. And with them go the inevitable refugees, 1 million of them fleeing to the south, where a constitutional government is being established. The communists take over North Vietnam, and red guerrillas continue the war against the South, demonstrating once again that with communists everywhere, words are one thing, actions another. Red Chinese invade and subjugate Tibet. At the first opportunity, the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibet, escapes to India, where bloody riots are incited by communists as red troops assert constant pressure along the India-Chinese frontiers. Meanwhile, the Red Chinese pose as friends and protectors of new nations, such as Nepal. And old nations such as Albania. And seek to extend communist influence into Latin America. communist influence into Latin America. Here in Peking, communist delegates from different Latin American countries meet their hosts, Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai. Their most important success occurs in Cuba. Only 90 miles from the United States, where a brutal dictatorship under Fidel Castro has imposed the yoke of Marxism on the Cubans. Another 7 million people trapped behind the Iron Curtain. In Moscow, Yuri Gagarin, Soviet cosmonaut, speaks of the peaceful foreign policy of the Soviet government. Hands-off revolutionary Cuba. The Nationalist Congress of Socialist Youth chooses Havana as its meeting place. Delegates are from the United States, China, Canada, and Russia. And the following year, Castro announces, "I am a Marxist-Leninist and will be one until the day I die." Castro wins a Lenin Peace Prize. In British Guiana, Chetty Jagan and wife head a strong communist party. Everywhere in Latin America, communism, feeding on poverty, ignorance, and despair, seethes and prepares to explode. Student demonstrations and riots, one of the favorite techniques to prepare the way for communist takeover, are ordered from Moscow. In Montevideo, Uruguay, communists protest the visit of President Eisenhower of the United States. In Caracas, Venezuela, Vice President Nixon is mobbed and his car stoned by communists. Red riots shake Japan to forestall the visit of President Eisenhower and the signing of the American-Japanese peace treaty. Throughout the non-communist world, again and again, on orders from Moscow, violence. It erupts too in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Europe, in supposed neutral Yugoslavia, in France. But in the communist world, the demonstrations are quite different. Despite the infamous Berlin Wall, a constant stream of refugees proves to the world that communism has never been the free choice of people anywhere. This is a grim tug of war. East German police try to pull this woman back to captivity. She finds freedom. Others find death. Khrushchev insists the Soviet state has not ruled and does not intend to rule anyone or impose our way of life upon anyone. For Khrushchev, as for Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Castro, and as it must be for all communists, words are one thing, actions another. The communist conspiracy is a deliberate and predictable plan of action to subvert the world. A startling story from Lenin in 1914 with 13 followers to the present with 1 billion people under the control of a comparative handful of communists. In the Soviet Union itself, only 5% of the people are members of the party. A communist philosophy that the end justifies the means has caused pain out of all proportion to the pitiful social progress communism has achieved. And yet it has spread at a fantastic speed and demonstrated a frightening vitality. Why? Two primary reasons, I think. First, it has duped well-meaning people everywhere into thinking that it provided an answer to the economic and social problems of the world. Second, it has not hesitated to use force wherever possible to impose itself on unwilling people and to hold them in abject subjugation. What can we do in the face of this communist threat? Well, for one thing, we can, by example, let the people of the world know that the way of free men provides a surer, happier answer for their problems than the outdated, coercive doctrines of Karl Marx. That freedom, and not communism, is the doctrine of the future. We must remain strong so that we can never be blackmailed by men like Khrushchev and Mao Zedong, and so that we can uphold the hopes of the captive peoples. If, as the communists say over and over again, war is inevitable, then it is sheer folly for us not to make every conceivable political, economic, military, and psychological preparation to win. As I said at the beginning of our picture, no one knows what the end of the story will be. That's up to you.
World War I. More battles in Europe, more dead and more wounded. There is nothing new here, but it is arising through it, that of international communism. Lenin, smuggled through Germany with a handful of men in a boxcar, taking money from New York, was able to subvert the Kerensky-Menshevik revolution that toppled the Tsar and turn Russia into the war could be launched. Communist leaders harangued the masses, inciting them to rebel. The jails were emptied, and the criminals and insane together were freed to roam the streets. Hate and fear were the emotions the leaders sought from the masses, and they learned here in their initial base how they were best obtained. When the masses attacked the palace, they were rewarded and permitted to rape, murder, pillage, and burn. Like a spreading cancer, the tiny minority of communist leaders extended their control throughout the land. All opposition was destroyed. Some were sent to Siberia, and others were silenced by the grave. There was no counting the millions of innocent dead.